Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, confusing parts of being human, our connections with each other. We're going to be using the incredible work of neuroscientist Andrew Huberman to break down the science of love, desire, and attachment. We'll get into everything from those first subconscious sparks all the way to the deep-seated patterns that can define our entire lives. So let's just start with the biggest question of them all, right? Is love something we choose, or is it just some massive chemical reaction that's totally out of our control? Well, what the science is telling us is that the answer is buried deep in our biology, in these ancient mechanisms that have been shaping who we're drawn to for literally thousands of years. It's going to be a journey into the hardware and the software that drives our most profound experiences. All right, let's peel back that first layer, the biology of attraction. Before you even consciously think, hey, I'm interested in that person, your body is already picking up on these super subtle but incredibly powerful biological signals. It really all starts here, with these subconscious forces that shape who we find attractive before we even have a say in the matter. Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. Studies have shown that hormones have this massive influence on attraction. For instance, men consistently find the scent of a woman most attractive during her pre-ovulatory phase. Why? Because it's a subconscious signal of peak fertility. And hey, this is not a one-way street. During that same phase, women show a stronger preference for the scent of men who are more symmetrical, which is often a biological cue for good genes. And here's the kicker that shows this is biological. Taking oral contraception completely flattens these preferences. It just eliminates them in both men and women. Wild, right? This quote from Dr. Huberman is the perfect way to get from our subconscious biology to our psychological wiring. What he's saying is that the very same brain circuits that handled our bond with our parents, well, they get repurposed for our adult romantic relationships. It's such a fundamental concept. Our earliest relationships literally wire our brain for how we're going to experience love later in life. So let's dig into that idea in our second section, your attachment blueprint. These early patterns, we call them attachment styles, were first figured out in a classic experiment, and they really do create the foundation for how we handle love and intimacy, for better or for worse, for the rest of our lives. The experiment was called the strange situation task. Here's how it worked. A psychologist, Mary Ainsworth, would watch how a little kid reacted when their parent or caregiver left them alone in a room with a stranger, and then, crucially, how they reacted when that parent came back. And what she found was that these reactions weren't random at all. They revealed 4 very distinct and predictable patterns for how we learn to deal with love, safety, and being apart. So the first style, which is really the foundation for the most stable adult relationships, is called secure attachment. The keyword here is trust. The child gets upset when the parent leaves. That's totally normal. But they're quickly soothed when the parent comes back. They've learned, hey, my caregiver is a reliable source of comfort. And in adulthood, this translates to an ability to be close to people, to trust them, and to handle the normal ups and downs of a relationship without freaking out. Next up, we've got the anxious avoidance style. Now, these kids, they show very little emotion on the outside when the parent leaves or comes back. It's not that they don't care, it's that they've learned to basically turn down the volume on their need for comfort. They create this emotional distance. As adults, this can often lead to a real fear of intimacy. They might feel smothered by closeness and tend to pull away when a partner tries to get near, often valuing their independence way more than connection. The third style is anxious ambivalent. In this case, the child is super distressed by the separation and stays clingy and upset even after the parent comes back. They're really hard to soothe, almost like they're angry or resentful. It shows this deep uncertainty about whether they can actually rely on their caregiver for comfort, and in adulthood, this can show up as a fear of abandonment, a constant need for reassurance, and a tendency to get really preoccupied with the relationship stability. And finally, there's disorganized attachment. And just like the name suggests, these children don't really have a clear strategy at all. They might show this mix of weird, contradictory behaviors, like they'll walk towards the parent but then suddenly freeze or turn away. It's a sign of deep confusion, often because the caregiver is both a source of comfort and a source of fear. In adult relationships, this can be the toughest style, marked by a deep desire for intimacy that's constantly at war with a deep fear of it. Okay, so we've got our psychological blueprint. Now, let's look at the brain's actual hardware that's running all this software. For Section 3, we're covering the 3 core neural circuits that drive our experiences of love and attachment, and this is based largely on the work of anthropologist Helen Fisher. These 3 systems are all woven together. First, you've got your autonomic nervous system. This thing controls your state of alertness and calm. Second, your empathy circuits, which let you emotionally sync up with someone else. And third, and this one is so cool, is a circuit for what researchers call positive delusions. That's the powerful and actually necessary belief that our partner is just uniquely special. Dr. Huberman uses this fantastic seesaw analogy for the autonomic nervous system. So think of the sympathetic side as your body's gas pedal. It drives alertness, that feeling of pursuit, and the peak of sexual climax. Then the parasympathetic side is the brake. It controls relaxation, physical arousal, and that amazing, calm, connected feeling of bonding after intimacy. A healthy connection requires this fluid dance between both systems, a smooth shift from alert to calm and back again. And this deep biological understanding, it's not just theoretical. It actually allows scientists to predict relationship outcomes with an accuracy that is just startling. In Section 4, we're going to look at the groundbreaking work of psychologists John and Julie Gottman, who have spent decades figuring out the precise behaviors that make or break a bond.
Yet, you're seeing that right, 94%. Just by observing how a couple interacts for a few minutes, the Gottmans can predict with 94% accuracy whether that couple is going to get divorced. It's just a stunning testament to how readable our relationship dynamics really are. It shows that failure isn't random, it follows a very clear pattern.
So how in the world do they do it? Well, they look for what they famously call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for relationships. These are the 4 communication styles that are the absolute strongest predictors of a breakup. First is criticism, which isn't a complaint. It's an attack on your partner's character. You always or you never. Then there's defensiveness, which is basically just shifting blame and refusing to take any responsibility. Third is stonewalling. That's shutting down, giving the silent treatment, refusing to engage. And then there's the final and most dangerous one, contempt. This quote from John Gottman just says it all perfectly. Contempt is the feeling that your partner is beneath you. It comes out as sarcasm, mockery, eye-rolling, name-calling. Of all the negative behaviors, this one is the single most corrosive element. It's the #1 predictor of divorce. It's the complete opposite of those positive delusions we talked about that are so necessary for a relationship to thrive. All right, for Section 5, let's dive back into that core chemistry. Helen Fisher's research suggests that our dominant neurochemical systems, they create these distinct personality types that profoundly influence not just who we are, but who we are magnetically, irresistibly drawn to. So what's really fascinating here is the pairing pattern that Fisher found. She outlines 4 types. You got your high dopamine explorers and your high serotonin builders. These types tend to be attracted to people just like them. It's a like-with-like situation. They're seeking similarity. But the high testosterone directors and the high estrogen negotiators, they're drawn to their opposites. The assertive analytical director and the empathetic big-picture negotiator often form this perfect complementary pair. It just goes to show you there isn't one single formula for attraction. Sometimes it's about finding a mirror, and sometimes it's about finding your missing piece. So with all this incredible science, what can we actually do with it? Our final section is all about moving from understanding to action. We'll look at a few science-backed tools and supplements that Dr. Huberman discusses for actually influencing these biological systems of desire and libido. Based on peer-reviewed studies, Huberman talks about 3 supplements. First, maca has been shown to increase sexual desire in both men and women. And what's interesting is it seems to work on dopamine pathways, not by changing hormones. Then there's toncatali, which can help increase free testosterone, a hormone directly linked to libido. And finally, tribulus terrestris has shown some real promise for improving sexual function and desire, especially in women. Now, and this is really important, it is absolutely essential that you talk to your doctor before even thinking about starting any supplement regimen. These things can have powerful effects and can interact with other conditions or medications. So please, be smart about it. So what's the big takeaway from all this? We've seen how our biology, from our hormones to our earliest childhood attachments, creates this kind of blueprint for our relationships. The science doesn't give us a simple, easy formula, but it does give us a map. It shows us where our tendencies come from and what patterns we should be watching out for. So the real question to leave you with is this. Now that you know a little more about your own biological blueprint, how are you going to choose to build your connections? Thanks for watching.